Welcome to season 2 of A Seat. I am Demi.
And I'm Randy.
And on today's episode, starting season 2, I'm going to actually be interviewing Truth Coach Randy because he has had some amazing things happen since season 1. Publications, magazine covers, podcast interviews. You got something big coming up. And so I just want to kind of get into what has happened since then, and also just tap a little bit into the Sims approach. You know, of course, I was there side by side when you created it, but just dig a little bit deeper in how it has helped your clients and also how it has helped yourself. I think the viewers would love to hear a little bit about that.
I've been a few publications. I'd say, upwards around 20 or so, 5 or 6 covers. But that part is great. But the most important part to me is the fact that I'm getting the opportunity nationally to implement in the way that I like to coach.
Correct.
The way I like to truth coach. And fortunate for me that my approach has been copyrighted. It's the Sims approach. It's based around the story, implementation, manifestation, and show and tell. And many have asked, what makes that important?
Right.
And what makes it important is the fact that it gives a person the opportunity to evaluate their scenario through their eyes.
So when you developed the Sims approach, is this something that you went through yourself?
Well, it actually is, because
the process
grew organically. It grew organically through results. So what the issue was is myself personally, I was afraid to say, look at my story. And it's not the fact that I was afraid to look at it, I was afraid to analyze it, because I knew that through my analyzations, I was going to have to create some, villains.
Yeah.
There were going to be some victories and
Yeah.
some victors, but the hard part was the quote unquote villains. And it's not the villains in the sense of what you would see on TV, it's the villains in the sense of things that brought negative connotations on my growth pattern. And so that's where it came from. I had to single out some instances and some individuals in my life it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. But through that analyzation and implementing in different types of change, not using some of the ideologies that I didn't agree with my upbringing and not implementing into my upbringing of my kids. And people say, well, you don't think about that. Well, you have to step outside of the parent zone. That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
And I had to look from the outside in. I had to look at individuals and ask myself, what were the things that I was doing to affect their upbringing? And so that's when the implementation of change came from me. I had to learn how to treat my kids unlike the things that I did not agree with. But I also had to realize that a lot of those things that I was raised on were not things that I need to implement into my marriage. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I had a bad raising, but I am saying that nobody is just going to agree with everything that's put in front of them.
So it seems like to me the implementation phase is probably like the toughest.
Oh,
because
for sure.
Of course the story, because you got to tell your story. Of course you got to bring up all the pain and all the issues and all the deep dark stuff that you don't want to talk about, but actually implementing in the change, because there are certain things you're going to have to do.
Yes.
That's going to be tough.
Yes.
Really on you. It's not necessarily about the next person, but for me, it's about the implementation things that you're going to have to do in the tough situations and the tough decisions that you're going to have to make to move forward to the next step, which is what? Manifestation.
But
But how can you get there? So I guess for me, and especially for the viewers who, and I think we all get stuck on our story.
True.
We all get stuck in their story, man. The story is the implementation is probably the next hardest, but it's the story, because there's so many stories within the story. So for our viewers that are caught up in the story, what kind of advice can you give them based on your experience where they can find the one thing that's within the story that they're avoiding?
Well, it's that was good. That you hit the nail on the head. The story, the roadblocks don't come from the story. The roadblocks come from the perspective. You have to be strong enough to tell your story through your own eyes.
Correct.
when I say through your own eyes, you can't create all these main characters and eliminate yourself because you are the main character.
Correct.
But we create these other main characters due to protection factors. It comes to a point where you have to look at it through your own eyes and be okay with admitting that you weren't comfortable with something.
Right.
You know, and that's where the change comes when you realize that my perspective matters. If you don't tell it, no one knows. You know, and they'll assume the thing about people in a process that it does not have a blueprint. They don't know what they're doing wrong.
Correct.
So if the results, no matter the road, if the results implement a solution, they're going to feel like that they did it the right way. So if you have to be strong enough to say, you know what, everything you're doing is fine, but this right here, if we had did it a little bit different, we may have had a better result. You know, it's just life. Every problem, there's a better way. That's why things reciprocate so much. And people say, well, I did that. Yeah, you did it. But look at how they did it. And they saved, say, a month of time because they implemented a little bit of change.
Right.
Because what they did was, instead of utilizing everything that you laid out there, they implemented it in something that was a little bit better for them to make the process easier. And the results start to reciprocate in other things because now you build this confidence that, you know what, it's okay for me to have an opinion.
Right.
My opinion does matter.
Right.
What I said does matter. Now the implementation process, because it's a bouncing process, it goes from implementation to story, but now it becomes easier. And the manifestation process just happens. It just happens because manifestation can only come from new.
Correct.
It just can't come from, with the phoenix. The phoenix has to start again. It just so happens to come back from the rubbish, from the ashes, and it becomes a nice ball of fire all over again. It has to go to a dead point to get to a good point.
Right.
And it just becomes so easy. It becomes so easy. And now it's just like the phoenix. It's just different. It's like people notice it. You're different. What do you mean I'm different? Well, the last time we were in this scenario, you were a little timid. I know you got it in you, but you were afraid to give it to people. But now you're strong with it and you're willing to give it. And I need that in my life because the way you think is so important. But see, you didn't understand how important the way you think was. And that's what makes manifestation so sweet. People understand that you, the individual, has something to give.
Yeah.
Show and tell is just what it is.
Yeah.
You walking in your new life.
So it's 4 steps. It's the story, and you have the implementation, and you have manifestation, and then the last one is show and tell.
Show and tell.
And show and tell, to me,
that's my favorite part.
It's just basically you being your authentic self. You walking in your truth, like you've been through the process and the procedures, and now you're at a point where show and tell is just basically the real me.
That's just you.
Up under it all. And what I love about the Sims, when you think about Sims, you think about assimilation.
Yeah.
Assimilation. So, and we've talked about it several times. Life is like assimilation. You know what I mean?
Life is assimilation.
Life is assimilation. But in my research and just listening, those 4 steps help them come out of that assimilation.
And it's funny you said that because people look at it and they say the reality is assimilation. No, the false reality is assimilation.
Correct.
The reality is what you're afraid of because the reality might leave you by yourself. And that's just it's just perfect. You think about the Sims, say, game or things like that. This is where people go to create the lifestyle that they wish they could have.
Correct.
Instead of just doing it in real time.
Correct.
But like I said, one thing that we're afraid to be is lonely in the conscience. Not realizing that a lot of times we're
lonely in the conscious.
But in reality, we're lonely.
Yeah.
But we have unconsciously placed ourselves in the lives of so many people and scenarios that we don't realize that we actually are by ourselves. Start reevaluating your real day. Your real day.
Yeah.
Not your fake day.
Right.
Your real day. And ask yourself, how many times did my phone really ring today? Who did I really see today? Or did I just go to work, come home, eat, and do the process all over again? Get out of your own way. Open your eyes to the reality. And then ask yourself what's holding you back from escalating yourself to the next level.
I think the answer to that question is people not wanting to disappoint or disconnect from those who are part of the story that could have been toxic or that they may disagree with or that they are very, very close to. You know what I'm saying? So what advice can you give somebody that is going through the process and it's like, I need to get there. I know I need to do X, Y, and Z, but Z might be that one thing that they're afraid of.
But
Whether it be a person, place, or thing, what can you tell them to make it easier? Because I think a lot of people get trapped. That's where they get trapped, is at that point.
well, I love to use myself as an example, and the one thing that I had to do was, what I'm protecting, is that really part of my story now?
Correct.
Now, see, when did the pain actually stop being implemented, even though it didn't stop hindering? Most of the time, wherever it stopped, it was dead at that point.
Right.
You're choosing at that point to allow that instance in time to be an effect on you. So let's start there. Let's start there. You keep implementing in this one instance. When was the last time that was really a factor in your well-being? And that most people will be like, well, about 10 years ago. Wow. So for 10 years, you've been giving someone or something the power to control you. And they didn't even know they had it. So imagine if that person or thing knew that they had that power. You may not even be existing right now.
That's true.
So in actuality, you're holding yourself back. We love to point the finger instead of holding ourselves accountable. Hold yourself accountable for your own transgressions sometimes.
Accountability is real.
Sometimes you're choosing to be in the place that you're in. Someone may have put you there, but you choose not to take the ladder out because you don't want to disappoint that one person that's not even in your life anyway.
So, I love The Sims. I've seen the work. I've heard, plenty of testimonials from clients, just how it has helped their journey. They feel free. They feel more like themselves. So I'm just happy that you, from season 1 going into season 2, have had so many great things happen. The Sims approach is really launching. You have a new book coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Which is called what?
The Truth of the Matter
Okay,
Is.
Truth of the Matter. That was just kind of like a little teaser. We won't get into the truth of the matter. We won't get into the truth of the matters, but in all honesty, I'm just proud of your journey.
Well, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question to you? Because see, y'all, one thing y'all realize is, even though I went through the process, she lived through the process. And many people say, do the Sims approach results really work? Well, I'll ask my best friend here that had dealt with me on the other side of the fence and ask her, which Randy does she prefer?
The new Randy. I'm thankful for the Sims approach, but I'm just more thankful that you had the bravery to acknowledge what it was that you had been dealing with.
True.
And then go through the process, because I can be a support, but it's something that you had to do. So just that alone in itself is brave. And in all honesty, I think that is why we are in bliss. And I can honestly say that.
We literally are in bliss. Before we close, I do have one thing to say, that to reiterate her. You have to be the one to make the conscious decision for yourself if you truly want the peace that you deserve.
Y'all already know he gonna come with that one-liner when we come to close, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook, A Seat with Randy and Demi, and also follow us on YouTube, The Real House. We will see you guys on the next episode.